In the cold hallway of Eastwood High, the ringleader yanked the orphaned girl's hair, slamming her to the floor amid a roar of mocking laughter. Phones flashed up, cameras rolling as his crew hurled trash at her, her skin marked as their target. "Smile for the zoo," he sneered, snapping photos while the crowd jeered. But what if the girl they tried to break had someone who could shatter their entire world? A man trained to destroy enemies, ready to expose the rot hidden in this corrupt town. The cruelest twist came when adults fueled the fire. The teacher crossed her arms, voice icy. "Discipline." Insults poured like poison, pushing her to the brink. She whispered to her mother's faded photo, longing for escape, believing death might hurt less than this endless hell. Just as they thought they'd won, a desperate voice trembled on the phone. "Daddy, please help her." A thunderous crash echoed. The classroom door exploded open. He strode in, calm and lethal, snapping the ringleader's wrist and unraveling a system built on lies, racism, and stolen lives. What drives a single father to defy a mayor's power, dismantle a racist empire, and adopt the girl the whole school discarded? If you've ever felt invisible at school, wished for someone to fight back, or been crushed by bullies, this is your revenge story. Watch them get destroyed, piece by piece, as justice shatters every limit. If you've ever been bullied, comment, "I survived" below right now. Are you watching on your phone, TV, or laptop? Don't look away, because this time the underdog rises and the mighty fall. The hallway buzzed with break-time chaos, but near her locker, it turned vicious.
"Check out the cage," he said, tilting his phone for everyone to see. The homepage of Eastwood Cage froze Nova mid-step in a stolen photo. Her face was slightly blurred, but her dark skin drew a flood of vicious comments. One read, "Looks like Eastwood's got a new gorilla." Another added, "Bet she leaves oil stains wherever she sits." The crowd erupted in louder laughter. Nova stood frozen, gripping her bag strap so tightly it cut into her palm. But Hunter didn't hesitate. He swaggered forward, hand extended like a ringmaster. "Step right up for the main exhibit, our school's very own charity case." His voice sliced through the noise, cold and cutting. He circled her slowly, eyeing her up and down. "Got your adoption papers today, Nova, or did you leave them with the trash they pulled you from?" His friends snorted. One shoved the other, both nodding in agreement. "Must be tough keeping up in class when you're still waiting for real parents to claim you." Each word landed heavier, deliberate and cruel. Nova kept her eyes on the floor, but the whispers and camera clicks pierced anyway. Her silence only fueled them. "Hey, smile for the camera," Hunter mocked, raising his phone and snapping another shot. "This one's going in the VIP section. Maybe someone will adopt you if you're lucky." The laughter sharpened, rehearsed, and vicious. He turned to the onlookers, downing them to join in. "Anyone got spare change for our resident orphan, or should we just toss her some peanuts?" He didn't care that the hallway had fallen quiet, that students nearby watched in silence. That's when Skylar pushed through the crowd, her expression fierce. She planted herself between Hunter and Nova, voice steady and loud enough to carry. "Leave her alone, Hunter. You're not funny, you're not clever, and everyone laughing, they're just afraid of your dad." For a split second, Hunter's smirk faltered. He straightened, eyes turning icy. "You want to play hero, Skylar? You know my dad could have your father fired with one call." She held his gaze, unflinching, but the crowd began to scatter, some avoiding conflict, others chasing the next spectacle. One of his friends muttered, "Chill, man, she's not worth it." But Hunter wasn't done. He yanked open Nova's locker, sending her books crashing to the floor. "Let's see if there's anything valuable in here, maybe a clue about where you crawled out from." He found the old photograph, Nova's only picture of her late mother, and waved it mockingly. "Oh, look, a keepsake. Bet you wish she'd come back for you, huh?" The taunt cut deeper than any physical blow. Nova lunged for it, but Hunter held it just out of reach. Not so fast. This belongs to the cage now. The hallway went dead silent. Even those who'd laughed earlier shifted uncomfortably. Hunter leaned in close, voice low so only Nova and Skylar could hear. Want it back? Earn it. This is Eastwood. Here, you start at 0. His hand hovered over her head, plastic bag already opened. Skylar tried to intervene again, but one of Hunter's friends blocked her, shoving her back. Not your show, hero. Hunter grinned wider, raising the bag high. I think you'll feel right at home. He dumped the garbage over Nova's head, moldy sandwiches, crushed juice boxes, a half-eaten apple. The stench of rot filled the air. There you go, Cage Queen. Welcome to your new house. Trash belongs with trash. A few laughed nervously, some snapped photos, but most looked away, avoiding her eyes. Nova didn't move as the filth clung to her hair and clothes, dripping to the floor. Skylar finally pushed past the blocker, pulling a napkin from her back, but Hunter shoved her aside again. Don't waste your time, Skylar. She'll never be clean. A teacher peeked out, saw who was involved, and retreated quickly. Clean this up, she muttered faintly before closing the door. Hunter tossed the soiled photo at Nova's feet. Pick it up, or I will. Nova knelt, hands trembling as she retrieved it, wiping away the grime. Skylar crouched beside her, voice low but fierce. Don't let them see you break. You're not alone. Nova shook her head, struggling to breathe. They'll never stop. Skylar squeezed her shoulder. Neither will we. Nova forced herself to stand, photo clutched tightly, garbage still tangled in her hair. Hunter watched them leave, unfazed. Better hurry, you two. Wouldn't want to be late for Mrs. Lydia Voss's class. She's got a real treat planned. The warning lingered behind them. History with Mrs. Lydia Voss was never just history. It was always a stage for reminding everyone exactly who mattered and who didn't.
That day, Mrs. Lydia Voss set the tone early, her eyes sweeping the room like a predator searching for prey. Today, she announced, we're discussing social evolution, how families, values, and education determine what people become. Her gaze settled on Nova, lingering far too long. Nova, why don't you come up here and help us illustrate? Nova sat rigid at her desk, eyes fixed on the streaks of dried garbage still clinging to her sleeve. Mrs. Voss's request wasn't an invitation, it was an order. Nova rose slowly, walking through the silent rows as whispers rippled from the back. Hunter kicked Skylar's chair, grinning. Showtime at the board. Mrs. Voss didn't wait. Class, does anyone know the difference between advantage and deficiency? She gestured toward Nova like she was an exhibit. Here we have a perfect example of someone born with less. No stable home, no parental guidance, no record of academic excellence. The words cut deeper than the snickers rising behind her. Nova stared at the floor, fighting to hold herself together. Education isn't just about books, it's about pedigree. Some people, unfortunately, start so far behind they'll never catch up. Hunter picked up a piece of chalk and flicked it at Nova's feet, smirking. Maybe she'll evolve if she tries hard enough. The class snickered. Skylar shot him a glare, but he only shrugged, reveling in his own cruelty. Mrs. Voss pressed on. Nova, tell us what your parents did for a living. Nova swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. My mom worked at a diner. My dad, I never met him. Mrs. Voss clucked her tongue. You see, class, compare that to someone like Hunter, whose father is a respected leader in this community. Which student do you think is more likely to succeed? The unfair comparison hung heavy in the air. Hunter winked at the class, then silently mouthed, Loser. A piece of chalk struck Nova's shoulder, another bounced off her hand. She flinched but didn't look up. Hunter snickered louder. Maybe the cage forgot to teach her how to speak up. Mrs. Voss didn't stop him. Instead, she turned her back and began writing on the board, granting silent permission for the torment to continue. Let's remember, she called over her shoulder, this class rewards effort, not excuses.
Nova's breathing grew shallow. "Sit down," Mrs. Voss said without turning, "unless you have something valuable to contribute." Nova hesitated, tears rising. Mrs. Voss coughed a glint in her eyes, and her expression hardened. "Tears won't help you here. In my classroom, we don't coddle the unprepared. There is no place for weakness." The room fell into thick, uncomfortable silence. Hunter whispered loudly, "You hear that, Nova? Maybe you'd do better at a different school." Mrs. Voss glanced at Hunter, but said nothing to stop it. Schuyler slammed her book shut, voice trembling with anger. "Why are you doing this? Why do you hate her so much?" The entire class froze, stunned that someone had finally spoken the unspoken. Mrs. Voss's eyes narrowed. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pivoted. "Sit down, Schuyler. If you're so concerned, perhaps you'd like to join your friend up here and demonstrate what happens to those who can't follow rules." Schuyler held her ground. "It's not against the rules to have a heart." Mrs. Voss' lips curled. "What's against the rules is disrupting my class with theatrics. You'll both have detention after school." Hunter laughed. "Better save her a seat in the losers section." Mrs. Voss continued the lesson, using Nova's name as a constant warning. Every student felt the unspoken threat. Keep your head down or you could be next. During group work, as Mrs. Voss patrolled the aisles, Schuyler quietly passed Nova a tissue. "Don't let her get to you. She's worse than all of them." Nova wiped her cheeks, whispering, "I can't do this anymore." Schuyler's voice was low but fierce. "Yes, you can. We'll figure this out." As her hand brushed Nova's, something sharp pricked her finger. She glanced down. A slip of paper had fallen from Mrs. Voss's binder onto the floor beside Nova's desk. Curious, Schuyler discreetly unfolded it. Her eyes widened as realization hit. She leaned close and whispered, "Mrs. Voss runs the site. She's the one posting your photos." Nova's breath caught, panic and fury flashing in her eyes. "Are you sure?" Schuyler nodded. "We need to tell someone. But who would believe us?" Just then, Mrs. Voss's sharp voice sliced through. "Is there a problem over there, girls?" Schuyler shook her head, slipping the paper in her sleeve. "Nothing, ma'am." Mrs. Voss stared them down a moment longer before moving on. Nova gripped her desk until her knuckles turned white. Hunter, sensing the tension, grinned wider. "You two look nervous. Don't tell me you're plotting something." Schuyler met his gaze, steady for once. "At least we don't hide behind our parents or teachers." Hunter smirked. "Keep talking. You'll regret it." The room grew tense. Students buried their noses in books. The bell finally rang, but no one moved until Mrs. Voss dismissed them. "In life, some people start in the mud. Only a few ever climb out." This was no longer just a fight with a bully. When the teacher and her favorite student united, the rules darkened. For Nova, there was nowhere left to hide. School let out for lunch, but no one headed to the main yard. Instead, a crowd gathered slowly behind the gym, lured by the familiar whispers and texts that always preceded something ugly. Nova was already there, back against the wall, staring at her feet, while Hunter strutted around her like he owned the space. He grinned, dangling the crumpled photo of her mother overhead. "Ready for a show? Let's see who's got the guts today." His two friends flanked him, arms crossed, blocking any escape. Phones came out. Some kids looked away, pretending to tie shoes or rummage in bags, but no one intervened. Hunter cleared his throat, holding up a wrinkled brown bag. "Today, it's simple. Who wants to throw the first sandwich?" He shook the bag, letting soggy bread, apples, and half-eaten snacks spill out. Nervous laughter rippled through the group. "Nova, you want your precious photo back? Show some respect." Nova hesitated, eyes flicking between the surrounding faces and the photo in his hand. One friend gripped her arm hard, pushing her forward. "Move, or he'll rip it up." With a shaky breath, Nova kneeled in the mud, fists clenched till her knuckles went white. Hunter's smile widened. "Bidding starts at $1. Who wants to teach our little orphans some manners?" Coins and crumpled bills hit the ground as a few joined in for the spectacle. Schuyler burst through the crowd, shoving students aside. "Stop this now! Give her the photo!" One of Hunter's friends caught her shoulder, pinning her arms. "Chill, hero. Not your fight." Schuyler glared, struggling against his hold.
Let me go, Hunter.
This is twisted. You don't have to do this. Hunter laughed, wheeling on her. Says the girl who can't even keep her own family together. Go home and cry to your mom. The insult struck like a physical blow. Skylar blinked hard, jaw tight, but refused to break eye contact. Hunter crouched to Nova's level, dangling the photo just beyond her grasp. Here's the deal, Nova. Want it back? Prove you deserve it. 10 slaps to your own face. Count 'em out loud, or kiss mommy goodbye forever. The crowd shifted uneasily, discomfort rippling through them, yet no one spoke. Nova looked up, eyes dulled with exhaustion and shame. Please, just give it back. Hunter shook his head. You're lucky I'm even offering a choice. Most here wouldn't bother. Her hand rose, trembling, then connected with her cheek in a soft smack. One, she whispered, the sound barely traveling. Louder, Hunter snapped. Show us you mean it. The next slap rang out sharper. 2, she continued, voice strengthening with each one. The onlookers watched in stunned silence. By 10, her face glowed red, her shoulders heaving. Hunter teased the photo overhead. Should I give it back? Maybe you didn't hit hard enough. Skylar twisted against the grip, holding her, fury blazing. You're sick! All of you are sick! Hunter ignored her, addressing the group. See, that's the problem with people like her, always begging for pity, never earning respect. He stood, brushing off his hands. You think I don't know about you, Skylar? Your dad playing soldier, while my father runs this town. Newsflash, heroes die for this town, but power owns it. Navy SEAL or not, your dad's just another pawn. The shot landed deep, but Skylar fired back. At least he stands for something, not like you, hiding behind your dad's money. His friend shoved her harder. Keep talking, maybe you'll learn a matching set of bruises. Another friend chimed in. Why are you even defending her? She's not family. She's not even your kind. Murmurs spread through the crowd, tension thickening. Hunter crouched before Nova again. Look at me. You wanted your mom's picture? He dropped it into the mud at her feet. Pick it up. That's where you belong. Nova reached for it, fingers shaking as she wiped away the filth. She stayed on her knees, staring at the faded image, lips moving in a silent apology to her mother. Skylar finally broke free and dropped beside her. Let's go. It's over. Don't give them another second. Hunter watched them retreat, unimpressed. Run along, losers. We're just getting started. No one spoke. A few drifted away, acting as if nothing had happened. Others pocketed their phones, quietly deleting the evidence. Nova avoided every gaze, moving like the ground might open and swallow her. Skylar wrapped an arm around her, whispering fiercely, They're not worth it! None of them! Nova offered no response, her eyes hollow, hope extinguished beneath layers of humiliation. Hunter's voice trailed after them, cold and final. Tell your dad thanks for the new gym. Maybe next time he can build a spine for his daughter. The taunts faded as they vanished behind the dumpsters. The last thing Nova heard before silence enveloped her was a faint mutter from the crowd. Someone should do something, but nobody ever did. Later, alone in the bathroom stall, Nova pressed the ruined photo to her chest, clinging to the one real thing left. The damage was irreversible. Her knees throbbed from the gravel, her face burned from her own hand, and the fragile belief that things could improve had been buried under laughter and mud. She barely registered Skylar knocking softly at the door, pleading for her to come out. Nova sat in the dim light, rocking gently back and forth. The line between despair and surrender thinned to nothing. When hope had been crushed into the dirt, only one place remained, the rooftop, whispering promises of escape, silence, and an end to the humiliation no one seemed willing to stop.
Nova slipped unnoticed through the emptying hallway, her footsteps echoing faintly until she reached the stairwell. There, her pace faltered. The rooftop door clicked shut behind her, sealing out the distant hum of school life. She stood at the ledge for a long moment, knuckles whitening against the rough concrete railing. In her pocket, the ruined photograph weighed like lead. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice fracturing. "I tried." On the other side of the door, Skylar slammed her shoulder against the frame, breathing hard. She had followed Nova's trail here, heart pounding, determined not to let despair claim victory. "Nova, please open the door. You can't do this. You're not alone. I'm right here. Don't give them what they want." The plea hung raw and urgent in the air. Slowly, Nova's grip on the railing loosened. Skylar burst onto the roof, tears already streaming down her face. She lunged forward, seizing Nova and pulling her back from the edge. They collapsed together in a trembling heap. Nova buried her face in Skylar's shoulder, sobs racking her body. "They never stop. No matter what I do, it's never enough." Skylar stroked her hair, voice cracking with emotion. "They want you gone because it feeds their power. Don't let them win. I need you here. I'm not letting you go." They remained locked together until the warning bell pierced the silence, forcing them to wipe their faces, steady their breaths, and descend to class. Back in the classroom, Hunter lounged at his desk, eyes gleaming with twisted anticipation. Mrs. Lydia Voss stood at the front, lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," she said sharply. "Take your seats, quickly." Nova hesitated in the doorway, but Hunter was already rising. He seized her hair, yanking her head back viciously. "Who said you could check out early? You think you get to leave before the show's over?" The room froze. No one dared intervene. Hunter's grip tightened, his voice a low, venomous hiss. "Thinking about jumping? You don't get to die until I say so. What would we do for entertainment then?" Mrs. Voss watched impassively, arms folded, as though the scene were merely part of the curriculum. Hunter's two friends appeared with buckets in hand. Without warning, they upended them. Cold water laced with thick blue-black ink cascaded over Nova, soaking her uniform and staining her skin. Hunter laughed coldly. "Let's wash away those dark thoughts. Maybe you'll come back clean for once." Mrs. Voss turned her back, refusing to acknowledge the degradation unfolding before her. Skylar shot to her feet, shouting, "Stop it! You're all monsters!" Mrs. Voss whirled on her. "Sit down and be silent. No one asked for your opinion." Hunter twisted Nova's hair harder. "Go ahead, Skylar. Run into the principal. See if your daddy's name carries any weight this time." Whispers of shock rippled through the room, yet no student moved. Then, with a deafening crack, the door exploded inward. The class fell deathly silent as a man in military fatigue stepped through. Mud flecked his boots, his eyes burned with restrained fury. Captain Grayson Hale crossed the room in 3 deliberate strides, his presence instantly commanding the space. No one doubted his capability. Without a word, he seized Hunter's wrist. Hunter struggled, but Grayson applied pressure with lethal precision. A sharp twist produced an audible snap, and Hunter collapsed, face contorted in agony. Nova was released instantly as Hunter staggered back. Moments earlier, while Nova still trembled in the hallway, Skylar had slipped aside, phone clutched tightly, voice breaking with panic. "Daddy, please help her," she whispered, fighting tears. "They're hurting her again. It's worse this time." On the other end came no drama, no questions, only a calm, iron command. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." Grayson had been hours away, boots still damp from the base, uniform bearing the grime of training. He drove through traffic and protocol alike, guided solely by his daughter's voice echoing in his mind. Mrs. Voss finally found her voice, indignant. "Who do you think you are, barging into my classroom like this?" Grayson ignored her, kneeling beside Nova to gently wipe ink from her face with his sleeve. He rose, squaring his shoulders to face Mrs. Voss directly. "You teach history, correct? Then let me remind you how history treats cowards and tyrants." Mrs. Voss paled but held her ground. "This is outrageous. You can't just—" "You allowed this. You let them destroy her. That ends today." The class stared in stunned silence. Hunter cradled his wrist, eyes darting wildly. "He broke my arm! Do something!" Mrs. Voss glanced toward the door, but Grayson blocked her path. "You are not leaving until someone answers for this." He turned to Nova, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. "You're safe now," he said, voice blending steel with unexpected warmth. Nova clung to him, shock and relief warring within her. Students parted like a wave as he carried her toward the exit. Mrs. Voss called after him shrilly, "You can't just take her. That's against school policy." Grayson didn't break stride or glance back. Some policies deserve to be broken. He pushed through the doorway. The classroom remained paralyzed, the old hierarchy shattered in an instant. Schuyler followed close behind, jaw set with unwavering loyalty. The nurse's office felt stark and heavy with the aftermath of chaos. Grayson set Nova gently on the cot, retrieving a clean towel from the cabinet and dampening it without a word.
Grayson moved with quiet precision, carefully dabbing the ink from Nova's cheeks, mindful not to press the areas already inflamed and tender. Schuyler lingered near the doorway, arms tightly crossed, her anger barely contained beneath a composed exterior. Nova remained silent, clutching the damaged photograph to her chest as though it were the last anchor keeping her from drifting away entirely. Finally, Grayson spoke, his voice low and resolute. "How long has this been going on?" Nova turned her face away, unable to reply. He looked to Schuyler, who answered for her. "Since the beginning of the year, it's only gotten worse." Grayson nodded, his lips forming a tight line. Gently, he eased back Nova's sleeve, revealing a bruise that stretched along her forearm. He didn't recoil, but his jaw clenched visibly. "These are old," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Did any adult ever step in to help you?" Nova shook her head, her voice a fragile whisper. "Nobody wanted to get involved." Grayson's hands paused. "You're involved now. That ends today." The door opened abruptly, and the principal entered, clipboard in hand, wearing a practiced but weary smile. "Captain Hale, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. We can handle this internally. The school has established procedures for situations like these." Grayson didn't budge. "Your procedures are exactly what put her in this bed. Your procedures allowed this to happen." The principal stiffened. "We appreciate your concern, but if you just let us—" Grayson cut him off, withdrawing a small device from his jacket and placing it firmly on the desk. "This is a secure military recorder. It captured everything in that classroom, every word, every threat, every laugh. I'm not asking for your process. I'm delivering evidence." The principal faltered, confidence draining from his face. "We will need to discuss this with the school board." Grayson shook his head, eyes like steel. "There's nothing to discuss. What happened to Nova was abuse, perpetrated by students and enabled by faculty. If you won't act, I will." The principal wavered. "Let's not escalate this further than necessary. Surely we can reach an understanding." Grayson rose slowly, his presence dominating the small space. "My understanding is simple. Nova Reyes is under my protection from this moment on. I'm initiating adoption proceedings. I will be her guardian, and she will not spend another day in this school without someone fighting for her." Schuyler's jaw dropped. Even Nova froze, her fingers loosening around the photograph. You really mean that?" she asked, voice trembling. Grayson met her eyes, his tone softening just enough to reveal warmth beneath the resolve. "No one should face this alone. Not anymore." For the first time, a spark of hope flickered across Nova's face. Schuyler moved to her side, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. He's got your back." The principal sputtered. "Adoption isn't something you simply declare in an office. There's paperwork, hearings." Grayson interrupted again. "That's my concern. Yours is ensuring the students and staff responsible face real consequences. If you bury this, you'll answer to far more than the board." A heavy silence followed. The principal retreated a step, defeated. "We'll cooperate, but this will attract attention." Grayson nodded, unflinching. "That's exactly the point." The nurse returned, carefully wrapping Nova's arm. "You're safe now," she said softly.
Grayson offered a brief nod of gratitude, but kept his gaze fixed on the door, as if anticipating the next threat. Suddenly, the intercom crackled overhead. "Captain Hale, please report to the main office immediately." Grayson tensed. The principal stepped forward. "That's likely the mayor's office. There's been a complaint." Grayson stood, expression hardening. "Let them complain. I have nothing to hide." Nova looked up at him, searching for any trace of fear. She found none. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Stay here with Schuyler. Don't move until I return." Nova nodded, watching him leave. For the first time, she felt a protective barrier forming around her, fragile but undeniably real. She turned to Schuyler, voice unsteady yet gaining strength. "Why would he do this for me? He barely knows me." Schuyler smiled through unshed tears. "Because you're worth it. You always have been." Nova pressed the photograph to her heart, a single tear tracing down her cheek, not from pain this time, but from tentative relief. Yet the relief was long-lived. Beyond a door, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Grayson met the principal at the main office entrance, where 2 uniformed officers waited. "Captain Hale," one declared, "you're under arrest for assaulting a minor." The principal stepped back, hands raised. Grayson stood his ground. On whose authority? The reply came sharp and swift. "Mayor Victor Donovan's. He claims you're a threat to school peace." Grayson didn't flinch. "Then prepare the handcuffs," he said evenly, "because this is only the beginning." The officers advanced, but Grayson's voice carried clearly down the corridor. "Don't let them frighten you, Nova." At the station, authority was little more than theater. Grayson sat in the cramped interrogation room, wrists cuffed to the bolted chair, posture unbroken, gaze unwavering.
The arresting officer leaned in close, attempting intimidation with a low growl. "You're not in the field anymore, Captain Hale. You hurt the mayor's son in this town. That means you answer to us." Grayson held his gaze without flinching. "You want my statement? Start with the facts. I stopped an assault. I have proof. If justice matters to you, review the evidence." The officer smirked. "Mayor Victor Donovan called you a threat. I don't need a judge to keep you here." In the waiting area, Schuyler and Nova sat shoulder to shoulder, tension etched across their faces. Nova fidgeted with her necklace chain. "Do you think they'll release him?" Schuyler shook her head. "They're not even pretending to be impartial, but Grayson won't yield. He never does." Nova's voice wavered. "What if this only makes everything worse?" Schuyler met her eyes steadily. "Then we get louder. We find someone who will listen." Their words still lingered when Hunter swaggered through the doors, flanked by his father's lawyer and Mrs. Lydia Voss, whose stiff smile radiated smug satisfaction. Hunter shot Nova a venomous glance. "You thought your new daddy could save you?" he taunted. "Guess again. He's finished." Mrs. Voss added coolly, "Perhaps next time you'll learn respect for authority." Across the battered interrogation table, Grayson faced his accusers. The detective recorded every word as Mrs. Voss spun her narrative, portraying herself as a dedicated educator victimized by an unhinged soldier. Hunter put on a convincing display of tears. "He attacked me for no reason," he sobbed. "My wrist could be broken." The detective nodded sympathetically, already swayed. Grayson remained silent, observing every gesture, every inflection. He recognized a frame job when he saw one. Then a low rumble rose from the street. Officers exchanged uneasy glances as a dispatcher's radio crackled. "Convoy inbound, multiple black SUVs, private security plate, requesting confirmation." The chief hurried out. Shadows fell across the station windows as the vehicles arrived. Former military operatives, now in civilian guise, lined the sidewalk within minutes, arms folded, eyes sharp, unmistakably elite. The lobby chilled with disciplined menace that unsettled even seasoned officers. The chief returned, struggling to hide his unease. "What is this, some kind of stunt?" Grayson shrugged. "You wanted to play hardball. These men are here to ensure you follow your own laws."
One broad-shouldered operator leaned in the doorway, his mere presence commanding silence. "We're not here for trouble, sir," he said evenly. "We're here for the truth, that's all." The detective opened his mouth to object, but thought better of it. Mrs. Voss paled, fingers tightening around her purse. In the corner, Hunter frantically texted, "Dad, it's spiraling. You said you had this." No reply came. Silence stretched taut. Then Grayson spoke, voice crisp and authoritative. "Release the footage." The detective hesitated, but a quieter officer, who had remained neutral all morning, pulled up Grayson's recording. Clear video filled the screen. Hunter yanking Nova's hair, Mrs. Voss standing idle, Grayson's precise intervention. The truth was irrefutable. The chief rounded on Mrs. Voss, tone icy. "Care to explain this?" She stammered. "It's doctored. He fabricated it." Grayson locked eyes with her. "You think I'd jeopardize my career with a forgery? This is your pattern, and you know it." The operator at the door nodded. "We'll remain until Internal Affairs arrives. No one leaves." Grayson's lawyer arrived at last, briefcase in hand, demeanor pure professionalism. He laid out sworn affidavits from witnesses, students, parents, even a junior teacher who had finally seen enough. The charges crumbled. The chief had no choice. "Remove the cuffs. Captain Hale, you are free to go, but don't leave town. There will be follow-up questions." Grayson flexed his freed wrists and stood tall. He gave a subtle nod to his team outside. "Keep watch on the kids and the teacher." They dispersed with quiet efficiency, making the message clear. Intimidation now cut both ways. Mrs. Voss stormed out, phone pressed to her ear, railing about legal costs and defamation. Hunter trailed behind her, all arrogance stripped away. Nova watched Grayson approach. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. He allowed himself a faint smile. "It takes more than a few cowards to stop me." Schuyler exhaled in relief. "What now?" Grayson's gaze hardened. "Now we collect irrefutable evidence. We don't battle in the dark. They own the shadows. We haul everything into the light." Nova glanced at the silent operatives still positioned at the doors. For the first time, she understood the strength of a united stand that refused to fear. Grayson led them out into the sunlight, head held high, yet Eastwood's buried secrets would not surrender easily. This was far more than a schoolyard clash or a single corrupt arrest. The enemy wielded wealth, connections, and a web woven from intimidation and silence. Grayson knew raw force alone wouldn't dismantle it. That night, the air thrummed with uneasy stillness, the calm that precedes a storm. Mrs. Lydia Voss's house sat perfectly manicured on its quiet cul-de-sac, porch lights glowing warmly, yet nothing could shake the sensation that unseen eyes were watching.
Mrs. Lydia Voss double-checked every lock and parted the curtains repeatedly, her nerves frayed to threads. After the humiliating collapse at the police station, she had spent hours rehearsing defenses, convincing herself she could still steer the story. Yet an unshakable certainty gnawed at her. The ground beneath her feet had shifted irrevocably. When she stepped into her bedroom, the fragile sense of security shattered. On her pillow lay a photograph, Nova's face swollen, eyes hollow with pain, dried blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. Mrs. Voss's hand trembled violently. She spun around, pulse thundering. "Who's there?" she called, her voice thin and brittle. Only silence answered. She snatched the photo. It hadn't been there earlier, and she lived alone. A cold dread coiled up her spine. Without warning, the television flickered to life. Static dissolved into video, herself captured mid-rant in the classroom, hurling venomous insults. Her own words boomed through the house, unmistakable and damning. "You will never be anything. Your kind only drags people down." The clip looped relentlessly, each repetition hammering fresh terror into her chest. She stabbed at the remote. Nothing. She yanked the plug from the wall, but the screen glowed on, powered by a hidden backup battery Grayson had installed during the brief window she'd been away at a conference. Confronted by her own ugliness, the hatred she had always denied, she fled to the kitchen for her phone, palms slick with sweat.
A note was taped to the refrigerator. "We see everything. You can't hide from the truth." The block letters were deliberately anonymous. She dialed emergency services. The call failed. She tried again. Only a faint buzz and the echo of her own recorded slurs played back, mocking her. Panic surged, sharp and uncontrollable. She bolted back to the bedroom and slammed the door as if wood could block the onslaught. Beneath her pillow waited a USB drive engraved with her initials and a slip of paper. "What you did isn't forgotten. Justice doesn't sleep." Hands shaking uncontrollably, she inserted it into her laptop. Files flooded the screen, hallway footage of her passing envelopes to Hunter, hushed conversations about punishments, audio of her scheming with Mayor Victor Donovan over problem students and protecting appearances. She clicked deeper, unable to stop, heart racing as undeniable proof of her complicity scrolled past. In the living room, the television volume suddenly spiked, replaying her cruelest moments on endless loop, now intercut with Nova's muffled cries. The house seemed to shrink around her. A lamp toppled from her trembling grasp, shattering loudly in the hollow quiet. Tears carved paths down her cheeks. "Stop it! Leave me alone!" she pleaded, authority stripped from her voice. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, vanishing whenever she turned. "Who's there?" she cried again, met only by silence. Desperate, she rummaged for her car keys. On the dashboard of her locked car waited another note. "Running won't save you. Confess." The message was unmistakable. Someone knew her every move and wanted her broken by fear. Sobs racked her as she clung to her phone, but it vibrated with a single text from an unknown number. "Justice has eyes everywhere. The past is coming for you." Sleep proved impossible. She paced the house, every creak and appliance hum magnified into a threat. Through the endless night she sat rigid in a chair, waiting for the next intrusion, the next damning reminder that control had slipped forever from her grasp. At first light, she surrendered. Keys in her trembling fingers, she seized the bag stuffed with evidence and fled the house. Her only remaining plan, drive to the mayor and beg for protection. Terror had transformed her, no longer the untouchable authority, but a creature driven by raw, primal fear. She sped through deserted streets toward Mayor Victor Donovan's mansion, clutching the bag like a lifeline, desperate for sanctuary she no longer believed existed. What she didn't realize was that Grayson had orchestrated every step. He monitored her phone, tracked her movements through software silently installed, collecting each panicked call, each GPS ping, every frame of surveillance. This was the irrefutable proof no one could dismiss. Now, with Mrs. Lydia Voss finally unraveled and desperate, he held the perfect opening.
The mayor's mansion thrummed with orchestrated excitement. Its expansive halls filled with the sharp click of expensive shoes, the rapid burst of camera flashes, and layers of polite conversation that masked sharper motives. Tonight's high-profile fundraiser was intended to cement Mayor Victor Donovan's image as a benevolent leader. Tables draped in pristine linen, local journalists strategically placed in every corner, and the town's elite gathered to applaud his supposed devotion to charity. But the carefully cultivated atmosphere cracked the instant Grayson strode through the grand entrance, flanked protectively by Nova and Skylar. Nova's formal dress caught the chandelier light beautifully, yet her shoulders remained tense, nerves betraying themselves in subtle tremors. Grayson moved with unshakable authority, his gaze locked unyieldingly on the mayor, who halted mid-sentence upon spotting them. Donovan managed a tight, insincere smile that did little to hide his growing irritation. "Captain Hale, this isn't some veteran's rally. I'd truly hate for any guest to embarrass himself here." Grayson's response came calm, but edged with unbreakable resolve. "No need for concern. Tonight isn't about charity. It's about truth." The reporter sensed the charged tension immediately and closed in, drawn to a scandal far more compelling than rehearsed speeches and champagne toasts. Hunter hovered just behind his father, jaw clenched tight, his glare fixed venomously on Nova. He took a bold step forward, carrying the same swagger that had once ruled the school halls. But Grayson's piercing stare froze him in place. Hunter's mouth parted as if to speak, then snapped shut, the entire room witnessing his confidence evaporate before their eyes. Donovan attempted to restore order. "Let's all remain civil. You wouldn't want to create an unnecessary scene in front of the cameras." Grayson didn't waver. "We're not here to create a scene. We're here for justice, and you understand exactly what that entails." For a fleeting moment, raw fear flickered across Donovan's features. The room fell noticeably quieter as Grayson turned directly to the assembled press. "This town isn't safe for every child. Many of you have sons and daughters at Eastwood High. Ask yourselves honestly, how much do you really know about what happens within those walls?" A restless murmur spread through the crowd. Microphones shot upward as reporters pressed forward. Skylar discreetly handed Nova a small flash drive. Nova's fingers trembled slightly as she accepted it, but when she spoke, her voice rang clear and unwavering. "I have something important to share. This isn't only about me. It's about every student who has ever been made to feel worthless." She connected the drive to the projector that had been prepared for the mayor's glowing slideshow presentation. In an instant, the massive screen filled with damning footage, grainy but perfectly audible, of Mrs. Lydia Voss and Hunter alone in an empty classroom. Hunter's voice was unmistakable. "If she's gone, we can claim her stipend. No one will care. She has nothing." Mrs. Voss nodded in agreement. "Make her believe it's her own fault. Keep applying pressure until she snaps." Shocked gasps echoed through the hall. Nova refused to falter, continuing with quiet strength. "You wanted me erased for financial gain. You wanted me broken because it made your lives more convenient." Donovan's face drained of cover as he lunged towards the controls, but Grayson smoothly positioned himself in the way. "Not tonight," he said softly, yet with absolute finality. A local reporter called out sharply, "Mayor Donovan, were you aware of these conversations?" Donovan adopted a practiced tremor of surprise. "This is the first I've heard of any such thing. If these allegations prove true, we will, of course, launch a full investigation." Grayson countered immediately. "You can't investigate your own crimes. Your involvement is undeniable." Another journalist demanded, "Mrs. Voss, do you deny the authenticity of this recording?" But she had already vanished from the room, slipping away the moment the video began, leaving Hunter isolated under the merciless glare of public scrutiny. Hunter stammered desperately, "It's fake. Someone manipulated it." Few in the crowd appeared convinced. Parents exchanged horrified glances. Urgent whispers escalated into open outrage. One school board members snatched his phone and began dialing furiously. Nova stepped forward once more, eyes blazing with long-suppressed fire. "You profited from my suffering, but truth cannot be purchased or silenced." Grayson rested a steadying hand on her shoulder, murmuring low, "You're no longer their victim. Now they fear you." Donovan made a final attempt to rally the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's not leap to conclusions. The proper authorities will thoroughly review all evidence. Until then, we must remember that everyone is innocent until proven guilty." His plea sounded hollow, overwhelmed by the rising tide of anger and disbelief. The carefully orchestrated evening had flipped irrevocably. Suddenly, two uniformed officers entered the hall. One leaned in to whisper urgently to Donovan. His expression hardened further. He turned back to Grayson, voice tight with strain. "You don't know the forces you're challenging." Grayson met him with calm certainty. "Neither do you. Not anymore." Donovan forced a brittle smile for the flashing cameras, though beads of sweat now lined his temples. Nova addressed the entire room one last time, her voice steady and unyielding. "You all saw it happen. Some of you looked away. Some even laughed. I survived not because of your help, but in spite of your indifference. Never again." Camera flashes exploded in a frenzy. The mansion, constructed to project power and intimidation, had transformed into a cage where long-concealed secrets were finally clawing free. Yet Donovan still possessed considerable resources, deep connections, hidden contingencies, and allies in high places. He would not concede defeat without a fight. Even as he shook hands and posed for remaining photographs, his eyes remained cold and calculating. Grayson noted the look, fully aware that while the public confrontation had been won, the larger war was about to intensify. Outside, reporters swarmed departing guests hungry for reactions. Parents clustered in hushed, uncertain conversations, unsure which side would ultimately prevail.
Nova and Skylar exited alongside Grayson, passing the velvet ropes with heads held high and spines straight. Donovan remained inside, phone pressed tightly to his ear, issuing low venomous threats and desperate promises. The message resonated in every corner of the room. Nothing would stay buried any longer. By sunrise, Eastwood High had become unrecognizable. Every exit sealed tight, uniformed guards stationed at every corner, security cameras blinking with relentless red lights. Mayor Victor Donovan had wasted no time. Rumors raced through the empty hallways. Some claimed incredible threats had been received, others whispered of frantic evidence destruction. But those truly paying attention recognized it for what it was, a last, desperate assertion of fading control. Grayson arrived at the locked gates with Nova and Skylar in tow, identifying the private security teams that answered solely to Donovan. Stay close sharply. His eyes scanned every shadow and movement. Don't speak to anyone you don't trust completely. The corridors felt eerily subdued for a building so steeped in hidden malice. He guided them through a discreet side entrance, bypassing the main foyer where Donovan's hired muscle had gathered in force. Why seal the entire school? Skylar muttered under her breath. Donovan's trying to sanitize everything, Grayson replied quietly. He knows exactly what evidence we possess. He'll stop at nothing to destroy it before it reaches the course. A faint metallic glint cut his eye further down the math wing. Two operatives advancing in practiced formation, radios clipped to their shoulders. Clearly not standard school security, but professional enforcers. Grayson quickly herded Nova and Skylar into the nearest empty classroom and pulled up a detailed school map on his phone. We need to reach the server room. That's where Mrs. Voss stores her backups. Secure that drive and they lose their final card. Heavy footsteps echoed closer. One of Donovan's men shouted, "They're near the lockers." Grayson wedged a desk against the door and turned to the girls. "You remember everything I taught you. Move quickly, stay together." Nova's face was pale but determined. "I'm ready." He handed Nova his phone. "If we get separated, send all files to the contact marked Phoenix." Skylar nodded grimly. "What about you?" Grayson's response was pure focus. "I'll draw them off. Go now." He charged back into the hallway, deliberately attracting pursuit as he led two guards on a calculated chase through the science wing. Nova and Skylar darted down the art corridor, narrowly evading a third operative, hearts hammering as they slipped into the tech lab. "He's risking everything for us," Skylar whispered. Nova steadied her breathing. "Then so are we." Grayson deployed every tactic in his arsenal, triggering fire alarms, short-circuiting cameras, forcing the guards to divide the forces. Each time they believed they had him trapped, he melted away, leaving only frustration and disarray. At last, Nova and Skylar reached the heavily secured server room. Skylar recalled the detail. The code is her birth year combined with her classroom number. Nova keyed it in swiftly. The door unlocked with a soft click. The low hum of servers filled the air. Nova located the backup drive, paused only a fraction of a second, then pulled it free. A harsh voice rang out behind him, a guard, weapon drawn. "Hand it over now." Nova turned and faced him without flinching. "You're fighting for the wrong side." Before he could react, Grayson exploded through the rear entrance, neutralizing the threat in two precise movements. "We're finished here," he stated, seizing the drive and ushering them onward. But escape wasn't clear. Mrs. Lydia Voss and Hunter blocked the opposite exit, faces twisted with desperation. "Give me that drive," Mrs. Voss hissed. "You have no comprehension of what you're destroying." Grayson raised it calmly. "I understand perfectly. It's over." Hunter's voice cracked with panic. "My dad will bury all of you." Grayson's reply was unyielding. "Your father has already dug his own grave." Mrs. Voss launched forward, but Grayson positioned himself protectively in front of Nova. "I want to hear her admit it," Nova declared suddenly, voice trembling yet ringing clear. "I deserve—"
Mrs. Lydia Voss slumped to the floor, all defiance drained from her eyes. The Eastwood High auditorium thrummed with restless tension. Every seat was filled. Students, teachers, and an ever-growing throng of reporters. For once, no one scrolled on phones or murmured about exams. Today, the school's long-buried secrets dominated every headline. At the front of the stage, Mayor Victor Donovan struggled to project authority, standing rigidly beside Hunter, while Mrs. Voss sat with hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened, eyes flicking nervously toward every exit. Grayson took the podium with quiet command, papers and a flash drive in hand, prepared to shatter years of calculated silence. He began without preamble. Today isn't about rumors, it's about truth. You've all seen the footage. You've witnessed what happens when power is abused and bystanders choose to look away. He motioned for Nova and Skylar to join him. Their presence on stage silenced the remaining whispers into absolute stillness. "There's more, far more," he continued, signaling the tech crew. The massive screen ignited with emails and voice recordings, Mrs. Voss and Donovan conspiring over falsified disciplinary files, orchestrating evidence disappearance, openly mocking the orphan girl. Each revelation fueled the crowd's growing fury. Mrs. Voss's face lost all color, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Donovan shot a sharp, silencing glare, but she averted her eyes. Grayson's voice remained measured and unrelenting. "You believed you could erase lives for profit. You tried to crush anyone who threatened your scheme. But you overlooked one truth. Survivors remember. And truth, no matter how deeply buried, always resurfaces." Reporters scribbled furiously. Parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some visibly horrified, others flushed with shame. Then Grayson delivered the first devastating blow. He turned to Nova, holding up an old locket recovered from her mother's possessions. Nova's parents died in a hit-and-run 8 years ago. Until today, the case remained unsolved. The auditorium tensed collectively. He cued the next video, grainy dash cam footage clearly showing a familiar vehicle speeding through a crosswalk at night. A second angle captured the driver's face unmistakably, Mrs. Lydia Voss. Gasps erupted like a wave. Grayson played an audio clip next, Donovan's voice, cold and clinical. "It's taken care of. No one will discover the truth unless you speak." Mrs. Voss stared in open-mouthed horror. Nova's fists clenched at her sides. She stepped forward, voice trembling yet unbreakable. "You killed my parents to conceal your theft from vulnerable children like me. You tormented my life to bury what you'd done." Mrs. Voss attempted to rise, but 2 federal agents were already advancing down the aisle. Donovan stood as well, but Grayson's next words rooted him in place. "There's one final secret you guarded so fiercely." He turned directly to Hunter. "You are not the mayor's biological son. Your real family lost you years ago. You were given a new identity, a fabricated life. But truth always finds its way out." He displayed the file, DNA results corroborated by sealed adoption records, projected boldly on the screen. Hunter's legs buckled. He stared at Donovan in disbelief. "Dad, tell them it's a lie." Donovan refused to meet his gaze, already retreating a step, calculating his own escape. FBI agents closed in swiftly. One began reading Donovan his rights as stunned silence blanketed the auditorium, the untouchables crumbling in real time. Mrs. Voss was handcuffed and led away, head bowed under the weight of every staring eye. Students recorded frantically, determined the world would witness this reckoning. Hunter remained alone on the stage, shaking, tears streaming down his face. Donovan offered no farewell glance. As Hunter called out desperately, "You promised I was your son," Donovan never looked back. Reporters shouted questions while agents escorted Donovan and Mrs. Voss out amid flashing cameras and rising voices. Grayson offered no triumph or gloating. He simply steadied Nova as she stepped forward to face those who had long treated her as disposable. Nova reached into her pocket, drew out the battered Eastwood Cage access card, and hurled it at Hunter's feet. "Welcome to our world," she said, voice raw, yet laced with hard-won pride. "You're on your own now." An eerie hush settled over the hall, the gravity of justice finally descending. Grayson placed a protective arm around Nova's shoulders. Skylar joined them, and the three stood united while the audience watched in silence, some with regret, some with relief, most sensing that something irreversible had shifted. The school, once governed by fearful silence, had been compelled to listen, yet victory was never flawless. Once agents, reporters, and onlookers dispersed, Nova sat alone on the stage edge, hands trembling in her lap. Grayson settled beside her, his voice gentler than ever. "You did it. They can't hurt you anymore." Nova nodded, eyes glistening. "It's over, but it still aches." He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "That ache is part of healing, and you're not facing it alone. Not anymore." Justice had arrived, swift and merciless. But for Nova, the true next chapter lay beyond retribution, learning to live fully, to trust again, to forge something beautiful from the ashes of everything stolen. The world had finally witnessed her pain. Now it was time to discover what came after mere survival. And this time she would have genuine family beside her. Morning light found Nova wrapped in an unfamiliar calm. Sunlight poured across her bed, gilding the walls in soft gold. For a long while she simply lay there, suspended between old instincts to hide and the novel sensation of true safety in this new space.
She heard soft voices drifting up from the kitchen below, punctuated by easy laughter, and Nova blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling above her. No flaking paint, no distant slam of doors, no lurking threat on the other side. It felt almost dreamlike, as though she had wandered into a life meant for someone else. She pushed back the covers and paused, her gaze falling on the small hoard hidden beneath her pillow, a dry crust of bread, 2 crackers, a half-eaten granola bar. Even now, the instinct to hoard food for later refused to fade, a reflex forged from countless nights of hunger under Mayor Victor Donovan's restrictive rules and Mrs. Lydia Voss's calculated punishments that turned every meal into uncertainty. Her fingers trembled as she tucked the crumbs back into place, guilt and shame twisting inside her. "Just in case," she whispered to the empty room, though she could no longer name what she feared. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Grayson's voice came through, quiet and patient. "You awake?" Nova swallowed hard. "Yeah, I'm up." The door opened a crack and Grayson stepped in, taking in the neatly folded blankets and the faint evidence of crumbs beneath the pillow. He said nothing about it, only offered a warm, reassuring smile. "Breakfast is ready. Come join us." Downstairs, the kitchen glowed with morning light and the comforting aroma of fresh pancakes. Skylar greeted her with a bright grin, pulling out a chair. Nova sat cautiously, unsure where to place her hands, unsure if she even belonged in this space. Grayson set a generous plate before her, eggs, toast, a tall stack of pancakes, fruit arranged in neat slices. "Eat as much as you want," he said softly, noticing her hesitation. "You don't have to hide anything. You don't have to save for later. There's always more, and you're safe here." Nova's eyes stung as she reached for the fork. Her hand shook so violently she nearly dropped it. Grayson saw, but kept his tone light and steady, as if this were the most ordinary moment in the world. "No one's going to take it away. If you finish, I'll make more. I promise, Nova. There's always enough here." It took every ounce of trust she could muster to believe him. Slowly, the tension eased from her fingers, and she took a tentative bite. The warmth and flavor grounded her in a way she hadn't known in years. Skylar chattered easily about anything and everything, filling the quiet with light-hearted stories from her own difficult days. "I once stashed Skittles in my shoes," she confessed with a laugh. Nova found herself smiling, the knot in her chest loosening just a fraction. Grayson poured her a glass of milk and set it beside her elbow. "You're allowed to spill things. You're allowed to make mistakes. This is your home now. You don't have to be afraid." Halfway through the meal, Nova's elbow nudged the glass. It toppled and shattered on the floor. The sharp crash triggered something deep inside her. She froze, heart racing, old terror surging as she braced for anger. Without thinking, she slipped from her chair, dropped to her knees, and reached bare-handed for the shards, already anticipating shouts or punishment. Instead, Grayson crouched beside her, gently catching her wrist before she could cut herself. "Stop, Nova," he said softly.
voice calm and steady. "Let me help." He didn't raise his voice, didn't scold. He simply knelt with her, gathered the pieces carefully, and handed her a napkin. "Accidents happen. No one here is angry with you." Nova stared at the floor, barely able to breathe. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it. Please don't be mad." Grayson rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm not angry. You never have to apologize for existing, for needing things, or for making a mess. You're safe here. I want you to feel that." Skylar knelt beside him, too, with a playful smirk on her face. "You know what happens when I drop something? Grayson deliberately breaks something twice as big the next day just so I don't feel alone." Nova glanced between them, searching for any hint of deception, but found only sincerity. A shaking laugh escaped her, tears slipping free. Grayson offered a clean towel and a gentle squeeze on her arm. "Come on, let's start fresh. New glass, new day." They finished breakfast together, Grayson sharing a story about the worst mess he had ever made during Navy training. Burnt oatmeal everywhere, smoke alarms screaming. Skylar piled on with her own tales of kitchen disasters, drawing genuine giggles from Nova. For the first time, her hand didn't tremble when she reached for the syrup. The atmosphere lightened, the lingering fear receding bit by bit. Afterwards, Grayson cleared the table, gently waving off Nova's offer to help. "You've done enough just surviving, Nova. Let us take care of you." Skylar grabbed her hand and tugged her toward the living room. They sprawled on the couch, laughing over cartoons as the weight of the past loosened its grip, if only slightly. Later, Grayson walked her back to her room. He carefully lifted the pillow and brushed away the hidden crumbs. "You don't have to hoard food anymore. If you're hungry, come find me. I'll never say no." Embarrassment burned in Nova's cheeks as she looked down. "It's just a habit. I'm sorry." Grayson shook his head. "No apologies needed. We all carry scars and habits that take time to fade, but you don't have to carry them alone." He knelt to her eye level, voice earnest. "Freedom isn't only about escaping those who hurt you. It's about learning you don't have to live in fear of hunger, of mistakes, of abandonment. You have a place here for as long as you want it." Nova's eyes filled again, but this time with fragile budding hope breaking through old cracks. Skylar poked her head in, waving a comic book. "Breakfast round 2 on the couch." Nova laughed, the sound surprising even herself. She grabbed her pillow and followed, her steps a little lighter, the unfamiliar taste of safety lingering on her tongue. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a day when mere survival wasn't the only goal. Morning sunlight flooded the room, and within its glow, Nova glimpsed not just shelter, but the tentative promise of home. The old fears didn't vanish overnight, but with every kind word and patient gesture, they quieted a fraction more. She was no longer merely free from her tormentors. She was learning moment by moment what it truly meant to belong. And as she settled beside Grayson and Skylar, legs tucked beneath her, laughter spilling into the peaceful quiet, Nova understood. True freedom lay not in the absence of chains, but in the presence of trust, kindness, and a future she could finally reach for without fear. The path to healing had only just begun, and this time she would not walk it alone.
The house had fallen into deep silence when Nova's nightmares returned, heavy and suffocating. In the dream, she fought for breath as thick black ink poured over her, its icy weight pinning her down. Faces flickered at the edges, Mrs. Lydia Voss's twisted smile, Mayor Victor Donovan's cold, calculating eyes, and the mocking laughter of classmates who had always turned away. She tried to scream, but the ink forced its way into her mouth, bitter and burning. Far off, Mrs. Voss stood on a distant shore, waving the photograph of Nova's mother tauntingly. "You'll never escape," she smeared. "You'll always be one of us, dirty, worthless, invisible." The words coiled around Nova like iron chains. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat, gasping desperately amid tangled sheets, a scream trapped in her throat. The clock glowed 3 a.m. The nightmare lingered so vividly she could still taste the ink and feel its chokehold on her lungs. She pressed her fists against her eyes, fighting back tears, refusing to surrender to the crushing sense of isolation that had haunted her for years. Then came the soft, steady sound of footsteps. Grayson appeared in the doorway, his presence calm yet instantly alert. "You okay?" he asked, crouching beside the bed. Nova shook her head, words catching in her throat. I had another one, the kind where I can't breathe, where she's still there, laughing at me. Grayson nodded, giving her space without pressure. That kind of fear doesn't vanish overnight. Sometimes it returns, even when you finally feel safe. Nova wiped her nose with the back of her hand, embarrassed. Sorry for waking you. His reply was gentle but firm. You never have to apologize for being afraid or for needing someone, ever. He paused, then extended his hand. Come on, you need a reset. Instead of urging her back to sleep, he led her quietly downstairs to the kitchen, switching on only the softest light. We're making pancakes, he declared, as though it were the most natural solution at this hour. Nova blinked, caught off guard. Grayson grinned, already reaching for the flour. Some problems are too big for sleep, but never too big for pancakes. Grab the eggs. She moved stiffly at first, limbs still heavy from the nightmare's grip. Grayson guided her patiently. Crack them harder. Don't worry about the mess. No one's getting upset over a little spill. Nova smashed one against the counter, watching the yolk slide into the bowl with a small spark of satisfaction. Pour in the milk. It doesn't have to be perfect. Flour dusted the surface as he handed her the whisk. Stir until your arm tires. Lumpy is fine. Life's always a little lumpy. The kitchen's gentle warmth began to seep into her bones. They worked side by side in comfortable rhythm. Grayson ladled batter onto the hot pan, letting it sizzle. First time I tried pancakes, I burned every single one. Didn't stop me from trying again. That's how you learn. The world wants you to believe one mistake defines you forever. It doesn't. You always get to make a fresh batch. Nova watched the bubbles form, her tangled thoughts slowly unraveling. After a quiet stretch, she spoke. Can I ask you something? He nodded. Anything. Her voice was hesitant. I wondered why you carried me out of that classroom instead of forcing them to apologize. Grayson set down the spatula. Because apologies from monsters mean nothing. You don't need closure from people who never saw you as human. What matters is who you choose to become when you stand beside someone who does. I want you to remember, surviving the way you did wasn't weakness. It was proof you're stronger than all of them. The words settled deeply. Nova reached for a plate as Grayson stacked the golden, imperfect pancakes. Do you think I'll ever stop having these dreams? He met her eyes steadily. Maybe not right away, but I promise every good day, every laugh, every pancake you flip makes it a little easier. You fill your life with new memories, and eventually the nightmares won't be the only thing that remains. She stared at her plate, then at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. That sounds almost too simple. Grayson shrugged, flipping another pancake. It's not simple, but I'll be here every time you need reminding. They ate in companionable quiet. Nova picked at first, then ate hungrily as fear gave way to appetite. She felt lighter, the night's terror receding into something almost like hope. The kitchen filled with the sweet scent of syrup, the stack growing taller. Nova managed a shy smile, her first in days. These are actually good. Grayson grinned. You made them. I just kept the house from burning down. She giggled, the sound foreign yet welcome in the stillness. For a while, the nightmare faded entirely, but when they finished, Grayson's phone screen lit with news alerts, trial dates, photos of Donovan in handcuffs, reporters swarming the courthouse. Reality edged back in. The world wasn't finished testing her. She stared at the images, fear creeping anew. What if I can't face the courtroom? What if they only see me as the next headline? Grayson covered her hand. You're not a headline. You're not what happened to you. You're Nova Hale. You decide how this story ends. She nodded, though old doubts lingered. Even after midnight pancakes and quiet promises, wounds didn't heal in a single night. But she was learning to reach out, to trust that someone would be there when darkness returned. She carried the lingering taste of slightly burnt edges and warm syrup back to bed, hope and worry intertwined. That night, the nightmare stayed away,
or perhaps they came, but she had something stronger now to push them back. The memory of guiding hands, shared laughter in the dim light, imperfect pancakes made and eaten with someone who truly cared. Healing wasn't straight or tidy, but for the first time it felt within reach. The outside world would continue demanding more, yet in that quiet kitchen, Nova had discovered something worth clinging to, and with each new dawn, she would take another small step toward a life where her scars no longer dictated her future. It was mid-afternoon when Grayson led Nova and Skylar into his private gym, the kind built for training warriors, not children. Rows of padded mats, heavy punching bags, and well-used gear lined the walls, everything meticulously clean and purposeful.
Nova lingered near the gym door, arms wrapped tightly around her torso as if to hold herself together. She had endured brutal schoolyard assaults and endless nightmares, but the sight of hanging gloves, heavy bags, and gleaming weights stirred a different, more insidious fear, one tied to vulnerability and loss of control. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, her voice taut with unease. Grayson glanced back, meeting her doubt with quiet certainty. "I'm not trying to mold you into a fighter, Nova. I'm here to teach you how to master fear itself. You can't always evade what terrifies you, but you can decide how it defines you." Skylar offered an encouraging grin from the side. "Trust me, he once made me do burpees until I thought I'd pass out. You'll survive this just fine." Nova rolled her eyes, a reluctant spark of amusement cutting through her apprehension. Grayson led them to the center mat, the padded surface soft beneath their feet. "Remember when Hunter's friends pinned your arms behind your back in those dark hallways?" Nova flinched involuntarily at the sharp memory. He nodded gently, acknowledging the pain without allowing it to overshadow the moment. "Today, you learn to break free from that grip. You, and only you, decide who lays hands on you. Not them. Never again." He demonstrated the escape with clean precision, quick, straightforward, and effective. It's leverage, not raw power. If someone grabs you, drop your weight low, twist your hips sharply, and press hard against their thumb. To illustrate, he had Skylar play the aggressor. "Grab me, tight." She complied without hesitation. In one seamless motion, Grayson slipped free and gently flipped her over his shoulder onto the mat. "See, it's not about inflicting harm. It's about refusing to be held captive." Nova hesitated at the edge of the mat, doubt creeping in. "What if I can't manage it?" Grayson's response was unwavering and kind. "Then you try again, and again after that. I don't expect perfection from anyone here. I only care that you keep showing up." He beckoned her forward with an open gesture. She stepped onto the mat, palms already slick with nervous sweat. Skylar took her arm firmly, recreating the all-too-familiar restraining hold Nova had suffered in shadowed school corridors. Panic flared hot and immediate, threatening to choke her, but Grayson's calm voice cut through like an anchor. "Breathe deeply. You're completely safe in this space. This is yours. You control what happens next." She attempted the technique once, barely shifting Skylar's grip. "It's all right," Grayson encouraged softly. "Again." On the second try, her tremors lessened. "Don't push the fear away. Channel it. Every moment you wished for freedom, every time you felt trapped, pour that energy right here." Something inside her shifted. She dropped her weight, twisted with sudden force, and Skylar's hold broke for a fleeting, exhilarating instant. Nova stumbled forward, suddenly free. Grayson's grin broke wide, unmistakable pride lighting his eyes. There it is, again. With each repetition, the movement grew sharper, her breathing more even. Sweat gathered at the base of her neck, but alongside it bloomed an unfamiliar and intoxicating feeling, deep, personal satisfaction. After 30 intense minutes, Nova escaped every variation Skylar threw at her. Grayson clapped his hands once in approval. "That's enough for today. You're absorbing this faster than most recruits I've ever trained." Nova collapsed onto the mat, chest heaving, cheeks flushed with exertion and triumph. Skylar flopped down beside her with a dramatic groan. "Told you he's a relentless hard-ass," she teased. Nova could only respond with a breathless, genuine grin.
For the first time, true strength surged through her arms and core, a power that belonged entirely to her. Grayson sat across from them, his tone shifting to quiet seriousness. What I'm teaching goes far beyond physical fights. Fear can become a weapon in your hands or a chain that binds you. Most people surrender the choice to it. You're learning to take that choice back. The strongest individuals I've known aren't those who never stumble. They're the ones who refuse to stay down. He reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. I had this made especially for you. Nova opened it carefully, revealing a sleek silver chain with a simple engraved tag, "Hail, never retreat." Her fingers trembled as she lifted the necklace. "I haven't earned this," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. Grayson shook his head firmly. "You're wrong. You've earned it every single day you chose to rise and keep moving forward. That's all any of us can ever do." He helped fasten it around her neck, the cool metal settling against her skin. When weakness whispers, touch this and remember what you accomplished here today. Real steel isn't forged in muscle alone. It lives in unbreakable will. Nova closed her hand around the pendant, letting the words sink deep into her core. Skylar nudged her playfully. "You look like an absolute badass now. Wear it to school. Make 'em all jealous." Nova laughed outright, the sound bright and startlingly genuine, as if discovering a forgotten part of herself. Grayson stood and offered each girl a hand up. "You don't need to be invincible, just stubbornly unwilling to surrender." They wrapped up with a series of cooling stretches, muscles aching pleasantly while spirits soared. Nova caught her reflection in the gym's mirrored wall, exhausted, sweat dampened, but undeniably taller, posture straighter, eyes clearer. Skylar looped a casual arm around Nova's shoulders. "Next session, I want a rematch, no holding back." Nova nudged her back with newfound confidence. "Bring it on, but maybe go easy on the burpees this time." The training session concluded, yet its deeper lessons lingered like a steady pulse. Strength wasn't solely about combat or dominance. It was about refusing to bow, about reclaiming full ownership of one's own narrative. Grayson handed her a fresh towel, quiet pride evident in his expression. "You're far tougher than you yet realize. Hold fast to that truth, especially when the world tries to convince you otherwise." As they stepped outside, the warm late afternoon sun glinted off the silver chain resting at Nova's throat. She brushed her fingers across it absently, absorbing the solid weight of its promise. Never retreat. It wasn't merely a motto, it had become a solemn vow to herself and to the family who had taught her that true courage lies not in the absence of fear, but in the relentless resolve to rise again and again, no matter how fiercely life strikes. The gym door swung shut behind them, yet the strength Nova had awakened stayed firmly with her. The real challenges ahead wouldn't unfold on padded mats under a watchful coach's eye. They would arrive unannounced in quiet moments when old memories threatened to pull her under, or when her voice was needed most in the wider world. But with steel now forged in her will and her new family standing unwavering beside her, Nova knew without doubt that she possessed everything necessary to confront whatever lay on the horizon, and this time she would never face it alone.
And this time, she wouldn't be fighting alone. Sunlight filtered through the leaves into the backyard, where Nova and Skylar sat cross-legged on the soft grass, the air carrying a rare, unburdened ease. It was Saturday, the first weekend in months without dread twisting in Nova's stomach. She watched Skylar scroll idly through her phone, head tilted, hair cascading like a protective curtain over her shoulders. "You ever get nervous walking into a new school?" Nova asked, absently picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. Skylar grinned. "I used to throw up every morning before first period. Nobody's as confident as they pretend to be." Nova let out a surprised snort, the sound catching both of them off guard. "What about when people stare or whisper behind your back?" Skylar met her gaze, her smile softening into something deeper and more understanding. "Let 'em stare. Their opinions don't write your story. You set the rules now." She paused, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Want a crash course in survival?" Skylar led Nova upstairs and flung open her closet doors. "First rule, ditch the old hoodie.
You don't need to hide anymore." She handed over a sharp black blazer, perfectly fitted jeans, and crisp, bold sneakers. If they want to talk, give them something worth talking about. Nova hesitated only a moment before changing. The new outfit settled over her like armor, sleek, confident, intentional. Skylar spun her around with a triumphant grin. "You look like you're ready to own a courtroom, not just a cafeteria." Nova's reflection sparked something fierce inside her. Maybe one day I will. They moved to the bathroom mirror, practicing comebacks until they flowed effortlessly. If someone slings names at you, Skylar demonstrated, hit back with, "You must be really bored if I'm the highlight of your day." And if they ask dumb questions about your hair or anything else, Google's free. Nova repeated each line, her voice gaining strength and clarity with each round. Laughter pushed back the lingering shadows of fear. For those hours, court dates and nightmares felt distant, just two sisters plotting how to stand unbreakable. Later, they sprawled on the lawn again, a plate of warm cookies between them. "I used to dream about having a sister," Nova admitted quietly. "Someone who truly understand, someone I could trust not to disappear." Skylar leaned her shoulder against Nova's. "I used to dream my mom would come back, or that the pain would finally stop." Nova rolled up her sleeve, revealing the faded burn scar on her arm from the day Hunter had pressed a lighter to her skin in middle school. "It's ugly," she said softly. Skylar shook her head firmly. "It's a badge, proof you're still here." She lifted her shirt slightly to show a small tattoo over her heart, her mother's birthday in delicate script. "I got this after she was gone. Sounds stupid, but it keeps her close." The afternoon dissolved into shared stories of fractured homes, bottled rage, moments of survival that nearly broke them, but ultimately didn't. Nova discovered Skylar's pain wasn't always worn on the surface. Skylar realized Nova's visible scars had never truly been seen by anyone willing to listen without judgment. The exchange forged them into something deeper than circumstance, true allies, genuine sisters. Monday marked a fresh beginning. Nova and Skylar walked into their new schools side by side, heads held high. The hallways buzzed with unfamiliar faces, some curious, some wary, a few openly judgmental. Within minutes, a cluster of older students blocked their path. The tallest girl sneered. "Heard we've got a charity case this year. What's it like living off everyone else's handouts?" Skylar tensed, fists tightening, ready to charge forward. But Nova placed a steady hand on her arm and stepped ahead. Her voice rang clear and unflinching through the corridor. "You're so invested in my life, maybe you should start paying my bills." The girl flushed crimson. Another chimed in, "Who do you think you are?" Nova's gaze never wavered. Someone who survived far worse than a pack of bored kids in identical sneakers. A third voice mocked from the back, "You talk big for someone who came from nothing." Nova shrugged, calm and unshaken. "Exactly. That means I have nothing to lose. Try me." A beat of stunned silence followed, broken by scattered laughter, some mocking, some genuinely impressed. The group parted, unaccustomed to pushback delivered without anger or threats. Skylar stared at Nova, pride radiating. "You didn't even need me." Nova exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You were right. If they want a show, give them something worth watching." Word traveled fast through the school. The new girls weren't easy targets. Back home that evening, Nova found Skylar on the porch, staring intently at her phone. "What's wrong?" she asked. Skylar handed over the device without a word. The email subject line sent Nova's pulse racing. Official court summons. They sat together in heavy silence, the gravity of what lay ahead settling over them like dusk. Nova studied her hands, steady now for the first time in memory. "Are you scared?" Skylar asked quietly. Nova's answer emerged slowly, but with quiet certainty. "I was. Now I'm just tired of running. It's time." Skylar squeezed her shoulder firmly. "We'll go together. Whatever they throw at us, we face it side by side." Nova nodded, drawing strength from the unbreakable promise. As garden lights flickered on in the gathering twilight, Skylar added softly, "Tomorrow we fight. For us. For every scar. For every secret they tried to bury." Their shared laughter drifted into the cooling night, fragile yet defiant, a shield against whatever waited ahead. The summons wasn't merely a court date. It was the final chapter of a story once authored by fear, now boldly rewritten by courage. They would enter that courtroom not as victims, but as survivors who had chosen each other, who had learned to stand strong in their own skin, and who refused to let anyone else define their worth. The past would be waiting, claws extended, but so would a future they could finally claim as their own. The real battle was about to begin, and this time, neither would face it alone. The courthouse loomed over the city like an unyielding monument, marble columns rising coldly, heavy doors promising impartial judgment without mercy.
Nova's fingers tightened around the strap of her new navy suit jacket. Her reflection stared back, calm, resolute, in the polished glass doors as she entered the courthouse alongside Grayson, with Schuyler close behind. Each footstep echoed not only through the vast, hushed hall, but also through the countless sleepless nights she had spent dreading this day. Today, however, her posture remained unyielding, gaze fixed firmly ahead. No more hiding, no more allowing others to dictate the ending of her story. Inside, the courtroom brimmed with tension. Reporters crowded the back wall, notebooks poised. Legal aides darted about with last-minute files. In the front row, Mrs. Lydia Voss dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, performing exhaustion and martyrdom for anyone watching. Across the aisle, Mayor Victor Donovan maintained a veneer of composure, flanked by lawyers ready to deflect blame onto anyone else. Hunter sat slumped in an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed, eyes downcast, the once unassailable swagger of Eastwood High utterly extinguished by weeks of isolation. Grayson gave Nova's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You know why we're here. Speak your truth. That's all anyone can ask." Schuyler brushed her fingers lightly across Nova's palm, a silent vow of solidarity. The judge entered, and the room rose in uneasy unison as proceedings commenced. Donovan's legal team moved swiftly, weaving narratives of a misguided youth swayed by corrupt influences. "Hunter was merely a confused teenager, Your Honor," one attorney argued, gesturing toward Mrs. Voss. "He bears no true responsibility for the actions of misguided adults." Mrs. Voss responded with practiced tears, recounting years of supposed sacrifice in the classroom while casting herself as the victim of overwhelming systemic pressure. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, some swayed by the performance, others unmoved and skeptical. Nova endured the theatrics, jaw set, eyes never straying from her former tormentors. When the judge called her name, she rose and crossed the aisle with deliberate poise, every aspect of her transformed self on full display. The clerk offered prepared notes for her testimony, but Nova returned them calmly. "I won't be reading today." She turned to face Mrs. Voss directly. "Do you remember the day you poured ink over my head?" Her voice rang clear and unwavering throughout the room. "You claimed you wanted to wash away the darkness, that I was inherently less because I had no parents, no name. You told me I would always amount to nothing." Mrs. Voss sobbed into her hands, but Nova remained unflinching. "You tried to drown me in shame. You failed." Nova reached into her pocket and held up the necklace she had worn daily since the truth emerged, the one tied to her mother's memory, her last tangible link to the past. "When the school sought to erase me, when this town permitted you to turn my suffering into entertainment, I endured. I discovered you murdered my parents to protect your secrets. I learned Donovan bought silence while you scapegoated me to preserve your lies." Donovan stiffened. "Objection, Your Honor." The judge silenced him with a stern glare. Nova pressed on, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You believed money and cruelty could conceal the truth, but every attempt to blacken my life only stained your own darker." A profound hush descended. Even reporters paused their frantic note-taking to listen. She turned to Hunter, her tone softening yet resolute. You despised me because I embodied everything you wished to bury. You weren't born cruel, but you allowed others to shape you into one. The choices ahead are yours now. I hope you make better ones than those modeled for you." The judge leaned forward. "That will suffice, Miss Hale." Nova nodded and returned to her seat, heart racing yet strangely lightened. Grayson's eyes glistened with quiet pride. Schuyler's fierce smile spoke volumes. Following a brief recess, verdicts were delivered. On charges of conspiracy, manslaughter, fraud, and abuse of authority, this court sentences Mayor Victor Donovan and Mrs. Lydia Voss to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The pronouncement struck like thunder. Donovan erupted in furious protests of injustice and corruption, but no one rose to his defense. Mrs. Voss collapsed into heaving sobs as guards escorted her away amid flashing cameras. Hunter received a reduced sentence, commitment to a military reform program. His actions weighed against years of manipulation and abandonment. He offered no resistance, only stared at Nova in silent defeat. In the corridor outside, reporters swarmed for statements. Grayson shielded Nova and Schuyler, but Nova paused briefly, addressing the cluster of microphones directly. "I was bullied, beaten, starved, and nearly broken because those in power believed they were untouchable. But I survived, and so did we all. If you're listening and feel your voice doesn't matter, know this: it does. Never let anyone else write your ending." Emerging through the courthouse doors into bright sunlight, Nova felt its warmth on her face without flinching for the first time. Schuyler linked arms with her on one side, Grayson steady on the other. "How you feel?" Schuyler asked quietly. Nova drew a deep, freeing breath. "Ready," she answered, "for whatever comes next." Their journey wasn't defined solely by courtroom victory. It was about reclaiming agency, redefining family, and stepping boldly into a future with heads held high. The past could never be fully erased, but its grip loosened with every stride into the light. And this time, Nova walked forward surrounded by unbreakable support. The afternoon carried a different weight, lighter, freer, almost surreal. Grayson stood tall in his dress uniform on the Hale family porch, hands steady as he positioned Nova and Schuyler beside him for the photographer's lens.
The flag rippled gently overhead, a quiet sentinel to this pivotal new chapter. The photographer issued instructions, but Grayson scarcely registered them. His attention was fixed entirely on the girls, on Nova, whose tentative smile masked the lingering fear that everything could still slip away, and on Schuyler, whose hand rested protectively on Nova's back, a silent vow that she would never let her fall. The camera shutter clicked repeatedly, immortalizing the moment. Grayson stood with a steady hand on each daughter's shoulder, the family bound not merely by legal decree, but by deliberate choice and hard-won survival. Once the session ended, Grayson led them inside and opened a drawer, carefully retrieving a weathered photograph. Months ago, the image of Nova's parents had been nearly unrecognizable, muddied, torn, battered by all it had endured. Now, meticulously restored, it gleamed as though hope itself had been woven back into every detail. Grayson placed it on the mantel beside the fresh family portrait. Two families side by side, one lost to tragedy, one forged through resilience, yet inextricably part of the same enduring story. Nova gazed at the paired frames, her hand trembling faintly. "They'd want you to be happy, Nova," Grayson said softly. "You're not replacing them. You're honoring them by living fully." Schuyler glanced between the photos and Nova, a warm grin spreading. "You know, you got two dads and two moms watching over you now, right? Some people just hit the luck jackpot." Nova rolled her eyes playfully, but a shy, genuine smile broke through.
The moment felt delicately powerful, something precious she longed to preserve forever. Grayson stepped away briefly and returned with an official envelope, pressing it into Nova's hands. "Open it," he urged, unmistakable pride shining in his voice. Nova unfolded the adoption certificate, the gold seal catching the light. She traced her finger over the words, "Nova Hale, permanent, irrevocable. No one left who could take her away." "It's real?" she asked, still half afraid to believe. Grayson nodded firmly. "It's real. Nothing and no one can change that." For a long while, the three of them simply stood in companionable silence. The outside world receding, the flag continued its gentle flutter in the evening breeze, the sun dipping toward the horizon, and everything aligned precisely as it was meant to, like a true family, whole and unbroken. "So what now?" Nova finally asked, voice quiet but curious. Grayson squeezed her shoulder with quiet assurance. "Now you decide who you'll become, what you want your voice to say to the world. You've earned that right." The paperwork was complete, the courtroom battles consigned to history, yet Nova understood the deeper journey lay ahead, healing, discovering her place, stepping fully into her own light. Still, with her new family steadfast beside her and the long shadows of the past finally receding, she felt ready, not just to speak for herself, but for every child who had ever needed proof that they mattered, that rescue and belonging were possible. And in that quiet room, surrounded by restored photographs and unbreakable bonds, Nova knew the story wasn't ending. It was only just beginning. It's possible to find home again. From high above the city, the sprawling world below felt vast, yet suddenly within reach. Nova stood on the rooftop, the wind weaving through her hair as her eyes traced the familiar streets and buildings where she had once been utterly invisible. Down below, life pulsed onward, children racing along sidewalks, cars humming through intersections, the weight of yesterday gradually dissolving into memory. For the first time, the scars etched on her skin and etched deeper in her heart no longer felt like shameful marks of defeat, but badges of endurance. She wasn't shattered, she was indelibly marked by survival. Her mind drifted back through every ordeal, the whispered insults, the brutal shoves, the hungry nights when she questioned her own worth. She recalled the faces that had tried to erase her existence, yet the ones who'd pulled her through shone brighter. Grayson's unwavering hand, Skylar's infectious laughter, and above all, her own quiet, stubborn refusal to surrender. She understood now. Bullies strike from fear, never true strength. Their cruelty spreads like a contagion among the insecure, yet it pales beside the enduring power of kindness. Real courage lies in refusing to become the very thing that wounded you. Later, the three of them walked side by side along the beach, footprints momentarily imprinted in the damp sand before waves gently erased them. Grayson maintained a respectful distance, close enough to reassure, never crowding, ensuring she never felt alone. Skylar skipped ahead, arms flung wide in exuberance, calling back for Nova to join her. The horizon burned with golden light as the day drew to a close, promising renewal. Nova reached into her bag and drew out the faded old hoodie, the one she had worn like armor to vanish, to shrink herself so the pain went unnoticed. She paused for a breath, then hurled it into the surf. The waves seized it eagerly, pulling it under. Skylar cheered and clapped with delight. Grayson's smile was quiet but warm. A lightness spread through Nova, freer than any she had ever known, as if every scar had guided her precisely to this liberating moment. She turned toward the camera at last, ready to share the hard-won wisdom. If you're out there feeling small or unwanted because of your skin, your story, or your scars, don't believe those who try to diminish you. Your pain isn't your fault. Your existence is no accident. Your heritage is a gift, never a burden. She glanced at Grayson, then at Schuyler, her voice steady and sure. I wasn't saved because I was an orphan. I was saved because I was worth saving, and so are you. The strongest people I know don't wage war on broken hearts. They cultivate peace within them. Don't let the world dictate your value. Don't let it erase your story. She watched the final rays of sunlight dance across the water, hope rising like the tide. She knew challenges would still come, but she would meet them as herself, unafraid, unashamed, unbroken. Nova stepped forward into the future, her family beside her, the past forgiven, yet never forgotten. I am Nova Hale, she declared quietly to the wind and waves, and I am home. Nova didn't leave the pain behind healed or untouched. The scars remained, some visible on her skin, others buried deep within. But she walked away, embracing one truth she had never been permitted to believe. Her life held profound value long before anyone chose to defend it. She had learned that cruelty flourishes when silence feels safer than bravery, and that dignity isn't a gift bestowed by others, it's a right you claim, even when your voice trembles. Grayson hadn't rescued her because she was helpless or irreparable. He had stood beside her because no person deserves to be erased. If this story touched you, which moment lingered longest in your heart? Have you ever witnessed cruelty and wished later you had spoken up or found the courage to intervene? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if stories of resilience and hope matter to you, remember to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing to light the voices and journeys that deserve to be heard.